It is Friday. Today is February the 27th, 2026, and the time is 1:42 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I won't be long, so I hope you can see me and hear me. I just wanted to let you know that it appears to me that people do not understand who President Donald Trump is. They don't understand what he's doing to rectify the wrongs that have been done to we, the American people. It appears that people do not know that President Trump is actually making moves to make the country great again and to make the world great again. But when you listen to the rhetoric of the mainstream media, you would really think he was some monster who's racist, soulless, and heartless. But when you follow him closely, and turn off the rhetoric of the mainstream media, you can see what President Trump is clearly doing to help the world. Now, I don't know if this is the real Trump or if this is a character playing President Donald Trump, but just stay with me for a while and just hear the argument that I'm presenting. Most of the people that watch my channel do know that President Trump really is the Trump card. He has been the one that was chosen to work with the military as the commander-in-chief. And as such, he has issued out so many executive orders to make our country great, to downsize the government, to return us back to the gold standard, and to make sure that everybody that lives here have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, hi family, I'm so glad to see you. Let me know that you can hear me, please. Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. So happy Friday for those of you who are just coming into the room. I just wanted to let you know that even though some people don't understand President Trump, I can clearly see that he's making moves. And it's interesting because when you have discussions with people that are in the financial industry or people who are in the political industry, any realm really in America, it seems like a lot of people are waking up to the fact that many countries, as well as America, have made decisions to have world peace, to get rid of the governments that were enslaving us, and to ensure that everybody on the planet has a happy life. Now, I want to back up a little bit. I want to talk about President Trump, but I'm just going to back up a little bit to let you know that I was actually working with a group of political figures and some people who work in global finance. And because I was trying to publish some of my work that I'm doing. And I was talking about the global currency reset. And it's interesting because they use Chat GPT to prove their point that there's no global currency reset. But when I said, yes, there is a global currency reset that's occurring, and I laid out all the facts, when they then put out all the facts that I included and they measured it against Chat GPT had to agree that in fact there is a global currency reset occurring. So what are some of the things I did to prove that there's a global currency reset? I said, well, if there was no global currency reset and no global restructuring in the financial industry, then please explain to me why many of the banks are collapsing, number one. Secondly, the banks that remain have to be Basel III compliant, meaning they all have to recognize gold as a tier 1 asset, which means they're recognizing gold as money. Then explain to me why central banks all over the world, including America, have accumulated gold and silver in record numbers. Then you have to explain to me why it is that 46 states in America have reclaimed silver and gold. And they asked, well, how did that happen? I said, you can look it up. How did they reclaim silver and gold as money? They repealed or removed the state sales taxes from the sales of precious metals. So I said, put it up, look it up in the Chat GPT, do your research right now. And they did. And the information came back, yes, you're correct. I said, so please stop telling me that there's no global currency restructuring or no global currency revaluation occurring. I said, okay, we're not going to just stay in America. Explain to me why the Brics bloc has expanded so much that more than 85% of the global population has joined the Brics bloc. And I was told, well, that's not true. I said, look it up. So when we did, we looked it up, we saw that more than 85% of the global population had joined Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa in trading with their own local currencies backed by precious metals. All of this. And then they had to even come back. Okay, because I'm going to let the cat out the bag. I'm writing a book and I had to get fact checked by my peers and by people in the financial industry. When they looked it up, it was true that more than 85% of the global population is using their own local currencies. Additionally, I said the African nations are leaving colonization and standing on their own as sovereign entities. They've kicked out colonizers. They've gotten rid of the Balfour Agreement, which was an agreement to divide the African continent. And they've decided, was it the Balfour Agreement? Yes, they've decided that they can now control their own financial industry. They can control their own political governance. They can control their own businesses. They've become economically stable slowly over time. They've put in economic reforms. I'm talking about African nations, 54 of them. And they said we're going to have one Africa, one payment system, and one passport. Proof that we're having global financial and monetary restructuring. So you got Africa, the African nations standing in unity as one. They're kicking out colonizers, which is now forcing problems and financial hardship in France, for example, when Senegal, Burkina Faso, Mali, Chad, and Niger kicked out the French government was now in chaos, and they kicked out the whole financial department in France because the whole country is struggling now that they cannot lean on the African nations that they've been ripping off. So you have the African nations, you have Brics, and Brics just implemented a new payment system that will rival the SWIFT payment system here in America. They connected their payment system to several countries, the Brics bloc, so that they no longer have to deal with the United States Incorporated or the United States Federal Reserve Central Banking System. So you have Brics have their own payment system. You have the African nations have their own payment system. You have all these two entities, as well as the Shanghai Corporation, Asian nations that are separating from the United States Incorporated in the Federal Reserve Central Banking System. So, and when people tell you that this is rhetoric, this is not the truth, that this is chaos, that this is conspiracy theories, it's because they haven't done the research, or maybe they don't understand what global restructuring looks like, what a global currency reset looks like, what a global financial collapse look like. So I told my peers, fact check me. Now, first, they were saying ChatGPT says it's conspiracy theories, but when I laid it out what Africa's doing, when I laid it out what Brics is doing, when I laid it out what's happening in America with Basel III compliance and how all banks had to be Basel III compliant and recognize gold as a tier 1 asset, when I laid it out that central banks all across the globe have accumulated gold in record numbers, when I laid it out that gold and silver was once money, but then was considered a relic once we got taken off of the gold standard. And I said, now you can clearly see that the whole world is hurtling or rushing back to gold as money. I said, look it up. King's World has an article that says the whole world is hurtling back towards gold as money. That came out in 2023. Here we are in 2026. President Trump is a force, and he is the one, along with the military, that's causing these changes. But what a lot of people don't recognize is that these were agreements that were set in stone years ago. If you looked at my video yesterday that I just published with Dave XRP Lion 1, you'll see he said that the ancient dynasties all across the globe, but specifically a lot of Asian ancient dynasties, actually agreed that there will come a time when they will need to use their money and their resources to liberate humanity. Dave is a forensic accountant. He worked with high net worth individuals and corporations and CEOs and people from all over the world. As a forensic accountant, he had to look at all of their spreadsheets, all the money that they made. And by nature of the work that he was doing a forensic accounting, he would catch certain people stealing money, and then he worked to help arrest them. He also not only worked with high net worth individuals, but he knows people from all across the globe. So I'm honored that he came to my podcast, and he's been on my podcast many times. It's just that this is a relatively new channel. So a lot of people that have followed me from 2017 on didn't know that he's been on my channel many times, but he confirmed that we are experiencing a global restructuring, a global currency reset. How can I prove that further? Countries have decided to stop trading with the US dollar and use their own local currencies for trade. How will they use their own local currencies? By the resources that all of these nations have. Africa is a continent full of gold, silver, palladium, platinum, cobalt, minerals that we've never heard of. But so is Central America, South America. Canada has lots of resources. Asian countries have lots of resources. The globe is full of resources. Rare earth minerals, precious metals, oil, land, water. These things can back up, fresh water, can back up currencies. Look it up. So, family, we are on the precipice of change. I know we're exhausted. People are ready to take to the streets. We're tired of being priced out of living. While our people, no matter where you're living, what country living, are homeless and on the streets. We've had open borders to allow people to flood into the Americas, flood into Canada, flood into Europe, flood into all different areas of the world, while the people who were living on that landmass are homeless, hungry, and in debt. But things are changing. We're on the precipice of change. Now let me parlay. I'm going to talk about Trump again in a minute. Can you still hear me? I'm going to parlay into why some of us are actually invested in foreign currencies. When you invest in foreign currencies, some people who don't understand will think that you're trying to capitalize on people. Here's the thing. It's called investment for a reason. Nations like Iraq have put out a call to the Americans. They have put out a call to people outside of their country saying, invest in my country. We have resources to exploit. That was exactly their words. We have resources to exploit. What they mean is we have resources here. So a lot of us don't know how exactly to mine these resources, but we're learning because we've been colonized. Iraq put out a call. Vietnam put out a call. Other African nations, when I was in Ghana, put out a call. We need the American people, or anybody who can invest in our currency, who can invest in our mines, who can invest in our industry, who can invest in our infrastructure, who can invest in our stock market, who can invest in the food industry, who can invest in our country to come help us, because we've had bloodline families to enslave our whole landmass and keep the indigenous peoples of those land masses in perpetual poverty. Please forgive me if it sounds like I'm yelling. I don't mean to. So people have put out a call to ask, for example, Iraq. Let's go to the Middle East. Some of you are invested in Iraq. When al-Sudani came to power, in November 2022, he said, in Iraq, they have taken advantage of the everyday people. But me, I tend not to do that. He said, I'm going to work to fight and end endemic corruption in my country. And I'm going to work with other countries to return my stolen money, and I'm going to work with the Central Bank of Iraq to revalue the Iraqi dinar against the United States dollar. Why? Because the United States dollar had preeminence. It was the world reserve currency. What made the United States dollar the world reserve currency? It was the United States Incorporated's agreement with Saudi Arabia to protect the Saudi kingdom in exchange for their oil, and thereby force all exporting nations to only get oil from Saudi Arabia. And they had to use the dollar to do it. Therefore, all countries' currencies had to be pegged to the dollar. And they had to use the USD to get the oil only from Saudi Arabia. Well, Saudi Arabia in 2022 joined Brics. That ended the agreement between the United States Incorporated and Saudi Arabia. Then, the next year in 2023, the written agreement between the United States Incorporated and Saudi Arabia was not renewed. That ended the agreement between Saudi Arabia and the United States Incorporated. Saudi Arabia now joined Brics. The Brics bloc became known as Brics, now is known as Brics Plus, because other nations joined. This is something I had to bring out to the people who were trying to fact check me and telling me I don't know what I'm talking about. When they did the fact checking, they realized that, in fact, yes, the United States Incorporated is being done away with, along with the central bank and the Federal Reserve Central Banking System, because many people have joined Brics. So let's go back to Iraq. Iraq, the leader, al-Sudani, said, again, I'm going to end endemic corruption in my country. I'm going to work with other countries to return my money, my stolen money, and I'm going to work with the Central Bank of Iraq to revalue the Iraqi dinar against the United States dollar. He did all of those things. He returned the stolen money. He got rid of a lot of corruption. He did a lot of economic restructuring. He wrote a lot of economic reforms. I discussed all of those reforms in my private group. If you're interested in joining the private group, you may by just clicking the join button, and we go into detail. He even revalued the Iraqi dinar against the United States dollar. Now, it's not trading on the Forex yet, but why did I bring him up? Because he said that we were only allowed to do whatever the United States Incorporated told us to do. But now that the United States Incorporated is being dismantled and the Federal Reserve Central Banking systems are being dismantled, we have sovereignty. He went on further, and he came to America, went to Washington, D.C. under the Biden and fake administration, met with D.C. to ensure that Iraq and America's policies to work together were in place and the payment systems were in place. Then he went to Detroit, where there's a high Iraqi American population, and he encouraged them to come back home to Iraq. He went on further to Texas and to not talk to Iraqi people, but American people. He went to Texas billionaires. He's not the only one that did that. The Vietnamese president did the same thing, called on Texas billionaires, and then they called on Americans at large who have the finances and the wherewithal to invest in their countries. I'm talking about Vietnam and Iraq. Al-Sudani, the Iraqi prime minister, when he went back to his country, he put out a call. All my businessmen, come back home. We're going to reinvest in you. We're going to give you the money that you need, the grants you need. We're going to help you however you need to make Iraq great again. He said, but we're not going to stop there. We're going to let you help us with financial policies and economic policy. You can help us create government financial policies, whatever you need to do. As we help you, you help us. He said, but I'm not just asking. Now, we talked about this in my private group, but you all can look it up and go to Iraq News. He said, I'm also putting out a call to the Americans and other people to invest in our country because we're open for business. Look up the articles that says Iraq is open for business. He went on in Iraq to do infrastructure rebuilding, economic policy reform, banking reform, saying all the banks had to be compliant with Basel III compliances like America. They had to be transparent, heavily monitored, etc., etc. He then created a transit system in Iraq that connected it to more than 66, they love that number 66, more than 66 countries, therefore making Iraq the transit hub of the Middle East and perhaps the largest and most efficient transit hub of the world. Do you know what happened then? The Iraqi dinar, the demand for it shot up through the roof. The demand for the Iraqi dinar shot up through the roof because they now have the world's best transit system so far to date. Because they have economic restructuring, because they called their businessmen back home, because they are creating new businesses, and they said they're open for business. So people who have an entrepreneurial spirit started investing in Iraqi businesses and the transportation hub, because just by virtue of having that transportation hub, it increased the desire for people to have Iraqi dinar. It made the demand go up. Then people start investing in the stock market. You're not taking advantage of or being a vulture or trying to hurt Iraq. You are helping Iraq. At least that's what the president said when they put out the call to please invest in our country. Now the stock market there is doing well. Their industries are doing better. Their GDP is increasing. The same with Vietnam. We discussed Vietnam in my private group. We discussed many African nations in my private group. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that not only is America being made great again, but the whole world. And you have an investment mentality, and you have a mentality to leave a legacy for your family, and you having the mentality to make America great again and other countries great again, means that you're concerned about the global population. That doesn't make you a vulture. That doesn't make you a bad person. That makes you a humanitarian and a philanthropist. A humanitarian cares about humans all across the globe. A philanthropist has the love for humanity. And as such, you invest in humanity, you donate money to humanity, you create projects for them. And if you don't create projects, you make sure you invest however you can in their infrastructure, in their industries, and their currencies. Because once that demand for the Iraqi dinar increased, what did that do to the supply? It brought the supply down, which now makes the Iraqi dinar even more valuable. And by the way, I spoke with Chief Mack, who said that dealers are actually running out of some currencies. And there's a reason. They're trying to get it off the street, because we are going to have a global currency reset and a whole global financial restructuring. Again, I'll recapitulate. Banks worldwide are shutting down. Why? Because they were operating on maritime law, admiralty law. We're getting rid of that. And because a lot of the CEOs were involved in nefarious activities, a lot of CEOs were found on the Epstein list. A lot of the CEOs were part of elite or elite or Elohim societies and secret societies. Those banks are closing, and the ones that remain will be turned into wealth management centers. Why wealth management centers only? Because we'll all be wealthy. As a matter of fact, that's why I published the video of Dr. Joanna Johnston talking about the birth certificate bond, not to try to get you to use it to offset the debt, but to tell you that you all are trust fund babies. We all are. And that birth certificate bond is what you are going to have access to. That TDA account, the Treasury Direct account, and your birth certificate bond that was created at birth for you, no matter where you come from all across the globe, you're going to have access to it, because the people who had their grips on it and would not allow you to have access to it, they're being locked up. It's not true that some people weren't able to offset their debt. Some people were. Juana Johnston is one of them. As a matter of fact, I've been following her for about 2 decades now. She moved to Mexico. She was so successful, she had to leave. There was another person. What's her name? Hat J. Y'all know Hat J. I can't think of her name. Another one. There were people that were very successful accessing their bonds, but they went incognito, because the more people got involved that were able to access, the more the United States government said we got to put a halt to that for whatever reason. But we're moving to a time now in this new era, the golden era, where we all will be trust fund babies. That's what NASARA is, the National Economic Security and Reformation Act. That's what the global version of that is, the Global Economic Security and Reformation Act. These were agreements that were made a long time ago. There are ancient dynasties. There are indigenous dynasties here in the Americas. There are European dynasties and bloodlines. We're talking about Australian and Aboriginal bloodlines. Everybody wasn't a slave to the United States Incorporated system. There have always been two systems operating side by side here in the Americas and worldwide. In the America, we had the United States Incorporated and we had the Republic. There are people who operated under the Republic that never paid taxes, never paid debts, never had debts, never paid fines, never paid any of those things. When I'm not talking about sovereign citizens, that's a misnomer. You can't be sovereign and a slave. You can't be free and a citizen. I'm talking about people who operate under the Republic, who knew their freedoms and knew their rights. They may have done paperwork. Some of them have badges. These people are not touchable. They put liens on policemen, judges, and attorneys, whoever tried to come after them. They are the ones that live in the private, and they're not all classified as black or classified as white. These are people who were in the know, who knew that they were sovereign, who knew how to operate under the Republic. What do you think the bar mitzvah is about? The bar mitzvah is not just about Jewish young boys coming 13 and coming into the age of manhood. It was about teaching them how to access their birth certificate bonds and how to live in the private. But it wasn't just so-called Jewish people or Zionist people either. It was a lot of people who understood that. They're not loud. They're not on the internet. They're not, or they hadn't been. They're not in the public. They operate in the private. That's why when you go on some roads, you'll see private road, and you're not allowed to go on those roads. You'll see private license on their plates. So you had the Republic on one side and the United States Incorporated on the other, operating side by side, not just here in the Americas, but all across the globe. Some people knew how to operate in the private sector. What's happening now with President Donald Trump and the white hats of the military, or the Grand Army of the Republic, that Motu proprio was about when Pope Francis told the world that this was going to happen? They're taking down the deep state, or the bloodline families, or the so-called elite, the secret society, Illuminati, who enslaved the planet. Many of them are not human. Many of them don't have warm blood like you and I. That's why they call themselves elites. They're Elohim. They're a part of bloodlines that are not human. But they're being taken down. This is why. And it's funny because even ChatGPT fact-checked me. I said the Supreme Court of the United States overturned the Chevron doctrine. And there were some people that said, oh, no, that didn't happen. I had to show it. Yes, it did happen. When the Supreme Court of the United States overturned the Chevron doctrine, they said that the United States Incorporated, that formerly had unlimited powers, they and their, at the time, 441 government agencies, were operating to further enslave we, the American people. Well, the Supreme Court of the United States said the Chevron doctrine, which had given the United States Incorporated and the 441 agencies unlimited power, were operating fraudulently, unconstitutionally, and treasonously. They were operating against our right to pursue life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. So the Supreme Court of the United States said, not only are we overturning the Chevron doctrine, but all of those agencies must be dismantled. The summer of 2024. Then the Supreme Court of the United States came back and said that state-sponsored banks must operate independently from and outside of, or they can, outside of the Federal Reserve central banking system, meaning they can disband completely from the Federal Reserve. I got fact checked on that too. I said, fact check me by my peers. Because, you know, when you're writing a book, you want somebody to fact check you. That's not true. Okay. When they fact checked me, the same chat GPT that told them I was wrong had to come back and tell them I was right, because I explained it further. And I said, not only are state-sponsored banks now operated independently from the Federal Reserve central banking system, but they're issuing out their gold-backed currencies. Why do you think they accumulated gold in record numbers between 2020 and 2026? Why do you think 46 states here in the Americas have repealed or removed the state sales taxes from the sales of precious metals? Why do you think banks have gold and now recognize gold as a tier 1 asset, not recognize US fiat dollars or the USD, but gold? Why do you think states are issuing out goldbacks? What are goldbacks, Dr. Pruitt? Goldbacks, 24 karat gold pressed onto a note that you can use today to buy local goods and services. Yes, we're having a global reset, a global restructuring of the monetary system, a global currency reset. This is why all countries decided to use their own currency for trade and not the United States dollar. How are they going to back up their currencies with all of the resources that they have? A whole restructure. It's not just America, it's Iraq, it's Vietnam, it's Zimbabwe. If you look at all the countries that we've been talking about and all the countries in which you're invested, you'll see that they've all they're eliminating corruption, and people are stepping down, including presidents. You can even look at resignation.info and see that. They are creating economic reforms. They have new banking policies in place. They're doing infrastructure change, and where they're rebuilding up their infrastructure. Their GDP is increasing, and they're doing much better. All this because the whole world agreed to global peace. And they are the ones, speaking of the white hats of the military or the Grand Army of the Republic, along with what people are calling Nasara white knights. These are just military people all over the world. They're the ones who put Trump in place as the commander in chief. They're the ones that said he's going to be the one to make sure this happens. Why do you think under Trump's first administration, you saw sword dances, you saw people yielding to Trump, bowing to Trump? You saw Trump when he went to meet the Queen, the British Queen, she ushered him in front of her. That's not normal. And then when he went to inspect the guard, which was her job to inspect the guard, it wasn't her guard. It was our military on her lawn. They are the ones that made him king. King, sovereign, I don't know what you want to call it. So people don't understand his role, and that's okay. We do. We get it. They don't understand, additionally, why he's doing things like closing borders and deporting people. He's not being cold or heartless. What he's doing is he's magnifying all of the fraud has been allowed to happen here. Look at I have Somali people that married into the family, married in or date or whatever you call it. So, you know, I respect them. I've done business with them. However, he magnified what Ilhan Omar was doing in Minnesota and how she has allowed some of the Somali refugees to come here and take billions, not hundreds, not thousands, not tens of thousands, but billions of dollars from the American people, allegedly supporting businesses and child care centers that we found out American investigators do not exist. They took billions of dollars from the American people while we have homeless people, while we have veterans on the street, while we have people with mental health illness, while we have people suffering, while we have children that have been raped and molested by the likes of Epstein and all his cohorts and all these so-called elite people, while we're struggling and living on the streets. Billions of dollars. Not just that community, communities from all over the world, emptied out their prisons, emptied out their, businesses, their jail cells, their drug communities, and they allowed them to come into the Americas seeking the American dream. Well, the American dream is for the American people. So while President Trump says, and many of us have said, we understand people, everybody is free. You're free to move about the country as you please, any country, as long as you do so lawfully and as long as you bring something to the country and for the people. When I traveled abroad, I was given a specific time to travel or to stay in their country. And then after that time is up, I have to leave. And if I don't leave, I will get arrested. But if I want to stay and seek residency, I have to follow more protocol. If I desire to live there and become a citizen, I have to follow all of their rules. And I have to bring hundreds of thousands of dollars, and now nations are saying $1 million to create businesses for the people that are there. I don't get privileges. You don't get housing. You don't get to vote. You don't get daycare and language lessons and jobs and low interest loans and businesses and millions and billions of dollars. If you go to other people's country, why is that allowed here? That doesn't make you racist. That makes you have common sense to take care of home first. That's why we're saying America first, and we're going to make America great again. Then you have people, when was America ever great? Well, if you do your research, it has always been great. That's why everybody's here. But you had countries that allow people to just flood into this country, living off the backs of the people, not really respecting us, going into their own enclaves, speaking their own languages, which if you're proud of your language, God bless you, heaven smile on you, is your prayer. We get it. But when you're dealing with American people, English is our first language. So we appreciate when people speak English. But if you're here and you're speaking every other language and you refuse to learn English, that makes us feel like you don't have respect for us. Just like if I go into your country and I refuse to learn your language, I refuse to learn your culture, I refuse to dwell among the people, I refuse to care about your people, you would look at me like I'm crazy. I'm the visitor. When somebody goes into your house, they abide by your rules. If you have temporary protective status, then you have a limited amount of time. You're supposed to be in America or any other country. But what people have done is they let it lapse. When the temporary protective status was up and their time was up, they didn't care. They just stayed here. They remained here and nothing happened. They kept getting housing benefits. They kept getting money. They kept getting food. They kept getting billions of dollars. Not all of them, but some. They kept getting jobs. And some of them would brag, we work harder than Americans. We're better than Americans. And it's really egregious. Even some of our brothers and sisters that come from the Caribbean islands, God bless them, we love them. They'll make sure they tell you we're not the same as y'all so-called black folk, and that's okay. Some of them will even tell you they're better. Oh, I'm not, no, I'm not y'all. I'm Creole, I'm this, I'm French, I'm that. Even if they're brown, I'm better. We're better than y'all. But see, now that Trump is vamping it up, and some of them are being deported, now they're calling on the so-called black community. We're all one, but we wasn't all one when you were saying you were better than us. That's why they have a problem with Dr. Kia Pruitt. They won't say my name because they don't have the kahunas. They don't have the guts to say my name. But since you want to be an internet warrior, why don't you pull up? Since you want to be internet warrior and talk against what I'm teaching, say my name, say my name, say my name. But you don't have the gall. Because you know I'm right. People have been allowed to come to the Americas and take advantage of our resources, our people, our time. They'll put businesses in our communities, but won't invest in the community. They'll look at you when you're in their businesses like you're trying to steal something. They'll work with the police to flood drugs into your community. Talking about some of the Arab communities. I know what I'm talking about. They'll come and put their convenience stores and gas stations in your community, and they'll work with the police to flood the drugs through your community, and with Hollywood entertainers, and with lawyers and judges who would get them out of trouble if it ever happened that it was found out that some people were like Hollywood entertainers and rappers who are over drug cartel, along with some of the attorneys and judges that are over drug cartels. Whenever it came out, then they would just go to certain judges in certain areas in the Americas to get them out. All one big brotherhood, all one big club that we were not a part of. But in order to make it up there through those ranks, to get that type of protection, they had to grape children. They had to keep you and me slaves. They had to make sure we were indebted. They had to keep us impoverished. They had to keep us divided. But now we're saying where we go one, we go all. We're Americans. We're going to stick together. We're humans. If you don't like the word human, we'll think of another word. We're all spiritual beings having this human carnal experience on this planet. And we refuse to be subject to these entities that have graped our children, siphon our energy, and allow everybody and their mother and father and aunties, uncles and cousins, sisters and brothers to come into the nation. You have to first clean out America, deport people back to their home country. It's not like you're saying, get out of here, we don't care where you go. President Trump said, self-deport, we'll give you $1,000. Some people say that ain't a lot of money. Well, you said, you claim you came with nothing. I came with $5 in a drink. You say you came with nothing and you made it. You said, this is what people have been saying. Oh, we came with nothing. I didn't even know how to speak the language. They brag, but they didn't tell you that if you came from the Jewish community, they have funds that they funnel millions into their people that come into the Americas. If you are Somali, they have billions that they siphon from the American taxpayers that they give their people. If you're from any Latin communities, the same ones that'll tell you, oh, I'm not black, I'm Latina. Oh, I'm not black, I'm Latino. Oh, no, I'm not black, I'm Puerto Rican. Oh, no, I'm not black, I'm Caribbean. Oh, I'm not black. And we get it because we're not really black. That's how they classified us. We're the indigenous, autogenous, original people in the Americas. We are the original Americans. We are the ancient mound builders. We know who we are. But it's interesting that people would come here to the Americas and, oh, I'm better than y'all. And they all were told to stay away from black people. Don't play with us. Because we're lazy. We don't like to work. Everybody else does do jobs that we don't like to do. Just spitting on the fact that we've gone through racism, chattel enslavement, which everybody's been chattel slaves. Now everybody get to feel what we've been feeling for hundreds of years. Just disrespect the fact that we had to deal with racism, discrimination, open borders. We dealt with open borders when the Europeans came over here by way of Christopher Columbus and all those people that emptied out their sails in Europe and brought them here. The first slaves were Slavics. People disrespecting our heritage, disrespecting our lands, disrespecting the fact that borders have been open since the 1400s and probably earlier than that, flooding our communities, raping our grandparents, taking the children, hurdling them into schools to re-educate them, teaching lies that we came from some African slave ships, now got us looking at Africans like, why y'all leave us here? And they looking at us like we never sent y'all there. We don't know what in the world you talking about. Got us looking at each other like, why didn't you help me? And they looking at it like, look, you're an American. You live in America. I was told to stay away from you. I'm not black. I never dropped you off. I'm not black. I'm from this tribe, that tribe in Africa, and I'm going to take my part of the American dream. And they get on their social media platforms and they're all in their country bragging about how much money they made off the backs of the black folks and even the white folks. But they want close proximity to the people classified as black and stay far away from us, the autogenous, indigenous, original people, and then can't understand why when President Donald Trump says we got to get rid of all the people that are here unlawfully, they don't understand why we stand with him. Because law is law. If you break the law, you got to go home. Nobody's telling you to go to another planet. Nobody's sending you to Mars. They're sending you back home, the land of your ancestors. You ought to be happy. Oh, it's so hard. And now all of a sudden, everybody's all in their home country showing pictures of them eating mud pies and dirt pies and living in shacks and all this, and having plumbing that's bad. But you said you were better than us. But you called people classified as black lazy. But you were told to stay away from us. But you didn't invest in our companies, and you didn't invest in our communities. You didn't give a care about us when you dropped off that plane looking for the big booty bitches, did you? And when we ask some of you to help us, what if we don't want to help? We're here to experience the American dream. So now what we're saying is a lot of them had temporary protective statuses, or they were only allowed here on certain visas that have run out. But what they were allowed to do under the old system when their statuses ran out and their visas ran out was to stay and break the law. Well, we are about law and order. Furthermore, law, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. What's just is making sure the people here on these lands, that whether you're autogenous original American or we have an agreement with you to be here and we have peace treaties with you, we have to be taken care of first. So they broke the law and they stayed here longer, and they continue to get benefits. They continue to get food from the food banks, from the churches, from these social organizations, Section 8, EBT card, money from the government. While the government said they are trillions, they're about $40 trillion in debt, probably hundreds of trillions in debt. But you're going to give to people who are on our land illegally, unlawfully, and they have a home to go to, and billions of dollars per year taken out of America to these other countries while we're suffering. While we're getting kicked out of our houses and on the street. But this is fair, according to people who don't like this movement of deporting unlawful people. Nobody's saying anything about the people that are here lawfully. So you know why so many people are crying? Because there are millions of people here unlawfully, even the ones saying they're here lawfully. That's why the ones that saying they're here lawfully are getting angry, and they try to attack people that support President Donald Trump's movement or the military, or people that's just supporting America first. They're mad. They're saying they're legal, but they're not. Only a hit dog hollers. They're not lawful. So what they would do is they would seek asylum. And the asylum paper, they really didn't even have to prove that they were in any imminent danger. They would send it to their lawyer, their attorney, or somebody they paid off to just fill it out. It was just a blank form, just a little real easy, just check marks and little thing. Pay the attorney good, very well, because remember, the attorneys passed the bar, British Accredited Registry. So who do they really work for? Were they working for the elite? Were they working for the British Crown? Or were they working for we the people? So they would just sign it off. Seeking asylum? Why do you need asylum? When you said your country was the best, when you said your country, I got a country to go home to. I'm just here to experience the American dream. So they would seek asylum, some of them. But President Trump is putting a halt on that. Because they didn't do it because they were in danger. They did it because we live well here in the Americas. They lived well here. They got free government benefits. They could put their businesses in all of our communities and thrive. They got billions of dollars. They got money. They got preferential treatment. They got medical treatment. They got the best jobs. Why do you think major corporations were buying up all of these houses? I'm going to transition to Trump in a minute. Major corporations and CEOs were buying up all of these houses and properties, therefore pricing us out of our homes. No matter where you're from, it happened in Europe too. Pricing y'all out of your homes, pricing Australians out of their homes, Canadians out of their homes, even people in Canada being priced out of their homes, because these corporations would buy them up to allow other corporate entities and unlawful, illegal foreigners to come in and live in your houses and your apartments. Because either they had the money to do it or they were funded to do it. They were recruited. These companies were going abroad to recruit doctors, lawyers, teachers, nurses, bankers, Walmart greeters, researchers, professors. I did a podcast talking about how we were so heavily reliant upon foreigners in every single industry in the Americas, that this is the reason why we have a high unemployment rate, not people coming to our lands. Again, I'm talking about people who came here unlawfully, or they overstayed. So these companies would go out, recruit people to come in, give them housing. Either they would give them housing or they would sell them housing, but if they didn't have the same interest rates as the rest of us. Give them housing, allow their spouses to come and give them a job too. I know what I'm talking about. I have family and friends in all different sectors of the Americas. And even in the Caribbean, they will allow the East Indians to come in there and take over the Caribbean islands. They will allow the Chinese to come in there and start businesses, live in the houses, buy up the corporations, and the Chinese and the East Indians buy up all those houses, corporations, and then treat the indigenous people in the Caribbean islands and all other places like they're dirt, like they're scum. So they've been colonized. We've been colonized by foreigners. It ain't just colonized by Europeans. We've been colonized by foreigners. They know it. That's why they told you they were better than you. They know it. That's why they said, oh no, we're not the same. So these companies were allowed to buy up houses and price us out of our community. So now we can't afford a house. We can't even afford an apartment, many of us, because the rents are so high. Well, they just put the foreigners in there, or their buddies that have the money and credit scores that don't have to follow the same rules as everybody else. But President Trump recently did something. As of the early 2026, President Trump said he's going to make housing more affordable. He created and put in force executive orders restricting large institutional investors from buying single-family homes. He initiated this again to make housing more affordable. He did that early this year in 2026. At the same time, encouraging people that are here unlawfully to self-deport and sending them home, flying them home now on our dollar, and giving them $1,000. And those that won't self-deport, if you're here unlawfully, he's sending them out. And what this is doing, what it's going to do, is make housing affordable again for the American people and for people in Canada and people in the Caribbean islands and people in the places that have been bought up by these major corporations who are owned by the same folks that are found on the Epstein files. They don't have to understand what he's doing. I get it. Yes, I'm a brown melanated woman who understands, understands, and overstands what's happening, because I was called and chosen, just like many of you, to be here to experience this and to help raise the vibrations of the planet and educate the people so that we can further liberate the people on the planet and make it a beautiful, amazing place to live. What else is happening in the news? Oh, yeah. Thousands of student loan borrowers are set to receive payments. Thousands, tens of thousands of student loan borrowers are set to receive payments following a major settlement with one of the country's largest loan providers. There was an agreement which totaled hundreds of millions of dollars from allegations that we borrowers were directed into costly payment plans instead of more affordable options. In 2024, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau finalized a settlement with Navient. Many of you know about Navient if you have student loans, a Virginia-based company that previously handled millions of student loan accounts. The company, Navient, steered borrowers into forbearance instead of other payment options. They forced or steered people into forbearance, which means that their loans were accruing interest. So it says where interest continues and accrues and capitalized. Navient was performing illegal actions, encouraging borrowers to pay additional interest charges. As such, they've been found guilty of treason and they have to pay borrowers some money. Now, how much? I'm not sure. I'll have to do some further investigation. So I'm just saying that things are changing. Because while we were borrowing money to go to school, a lot of people coming here that were undocumented. You remember, I used to work in student affairs, right? 3 different universities. Student affairs administration. We had undocumented student offices. They didn't have to borrow money. They were given money. Given money, undocumented. I'm talking about not even here lawfully. No documentation at all. Housing, food, tutoring help, help with getting jobs, help with learning English. College students, everything they needed. Academic support programs. In their enclave, separate housing, while we, the American people, were taking out loans. Why? Why, when we have a trust? Why? I showed you the video of Dr. Juana Johnston saying we all, when we were born, had a birth certificate. The birth certificate was then traded on stock exchanges, accruing interest, making a lot of money. That birth certificate then was put in a trust and it was supposed to offset any of our debts. But instead, what happened is when we signed promissory notes to get out a loan for student loan or a bank loan for a car or a bank loan for a mortgage for a house, we signing off on it thinking, okay, it's a promissory note, but we were actually, unbeknownst to us, giving them power of attorney to access our trust, to pay themselves, these companies, these banks, and force us to pay them again with interest. Meanwhile, people out here unlawfully were getting, not loans, free education. Some of them may have gotten some type of loan I don't know about. Free education, scholarships, schollies is what the kids call them, the students, college scholars call them, children, young people. And in America, you can even get a law degree from Stanton University and other universities right here in the Americas. And you're undocumented. You've been here unlawfully, illegally, with no paperwork. You can become a lawyer. How? And get more loans or money to finance your law degree. You can become a doctor. How do you know, Pruitt? I work for the University of Louisville School of Medicine. And by the way, all the people that's like, do you really have a doctorate? Why don't you just, instead of asking me the question, use the same fingers that you're using and get on the computer to ask, do you really have a doctorate? And what is it in, to do some research? University of Louisville. You can even look at my dissertation. You can look up every school I've been. I have background in economics, social and political sciences, and a doctorate degree, 3 master's degree, and a bachelor's. I invested in myself because that was important to me. It's what I desired. Of course, I've gotten some programming and I've gotten some propagandizing, but I use the information to learn how to operate, to create legacy for my family, economics, create social structures and businesses to help people, social sciences, and to teach people how to accumulate wealth, protect their wealth, and to do estate planning. That's what I use my education for. And it costs a whole lot of money. That meant I chose, I didn't have to, because I don't like saying what I had to do. Nobody forced me to. I chose to take out student loans. Meanwhile, you have people here on our lands and other lands giving money. So when I worked for this University of Louisville School of Medicine, I learned that there were foreigners. Some of them just happened to be Somali, and God bless them, because I was their advisor. Because people that are foreigner, when they're not black unless they want extra black help. help from people classified as African American. Some of them graduated from school. Let me go back. They hadn't even graduated yet. Foreigners, whether they're Somali, Indian, or elsewhere, they would, before they even graduate, they don't even have to graduate. You could be a medical student or a regular undergrad student and provide a transcript that says I'm in college, and you can get low interest bearing loans or no interest bearing loans to buy not a little bitty house, but a big, beautiful home based on a projection of what you could possibly make in the future. Meanwhile, we have to have a credit score. We have to be vetted. We have to be judged harshly based on whether or not you can pay all your bills on time. And I think that's important. But why do you have to take out a loan with interest and have a credit score on your own land when other people can come onto your land, not have to have a credit score or even have to have a credit history or a job? They didn't even have to have a job, but they can buy a house. And now they're angry because it's been found out that a lot of them were here taking advantage of the American people and the system. And you can't blame people taking advantage of something that was allowed by the government. So now President Trump is saying no more. But there's a force behind him. We're already under military law. We are already under martial law. The military is in control. And it's not just so-called black and brown people or people classified as copper color or black or brown or African that's being deported, or even Hispanics and Latinos. That's what the mainstream media is showing you for a reason, because they have an agenda. There are Europeans being deported, Canadians being deported. Look it up and stop falling for, if you have the rhetoric that he's only against brown people, that the administration is only against brown. That's not true. Ukrainians are being deported. Why were they even allowed to be here? Oh, because Putin declared war against them and they live in a war-torn country. Don't you know that in war, there are only areas designated for war? It's not the whole country that's being bombed. There are designated areas for war. Do people read Sun Tzu's work, The Art of War? Do they read war books? Do they read the books that talk about military occupation? Have they read the Prince? Have they read Machiavelli's work? You know, people talk against certain things because they don't understand and understand. Cleveland, my birth city where I was born and raised, downtown Cleveland is owned by the Ukrainian mafia. Look it up. Parts of Louisville, Kentucky, where I raised my children, are owned by the Ukrainian mafia. Look it up. The Ukrainian mafia owns a lot of land and real estate in the Americas, just like the Chinese Communist Party. So while I understand that the Ukrainians went through a lot while they're living and there was war there, why were they allowed to come here and work in the banks? Why are they working in government? Why are they working at the top jobs? Why are they even here? Yes, I feel a certain way about your country being war torn, but we got war going on in our lands too. Who's coming here to save us? Who has come here to save the American people? Who has put out a call to the American people to say, we know you've been enslaved. We know you've been through a lot. We know you've been considered chattel property. And if God forbid, if you classified as black, you have no standing in law. You're considered dead to the peak powers that be. They have put so many things in, redlining you, keeping you out of communities on your own land, forcing you to get licenses to transport or travel, forcing you at checkpoints to show who you are, while these so-called policy enforcers, who are really MS-13 gang members and bloodline elite gang members, foreign entities on your land, stopping you, checking you, asking you why you driving in this neighborhood, why you got this car, who do you think you are, how do you have a driver's license, how can you afford this on your own land, the land of your ancestors, the ancient mound builders. We're struggling. Not just us. You have the Europeans that are here who fought in the American wars, who their family members are on the street, veterans that can't even find housing. They're alcoholics. Because when they fought the wars and came back, nobody gave a care about them. They had mental and emotional illnesses. I can speak to that because I had an uncle who had mental illnesses because he saw his friends and his best friends and his relatives blown up in the war. Because he had orders to go blow up people in Vietnam. And came back with a mental health illness that nobody gave a darn about. And became sick. Because the mental illness leads to physical illness. It's not just my uncles. It's not just my people. Many of you either were working in the military or you have military family members who suffered. And then they came here and had to fight through all this red tape to claim a disability to get maybe a little bit of disability while people come to our lands and get all this money, billions of dollars, to enrich themselves and send it back to their countries, and then get mad when you ask them to go back home because they're here unlawfully and they've overstayed their visas and their temporary protective status. Well, now temporary protective status is over. The visas have ended. They're on freeze. Green cards have come to a screeching halt. You can't just marry somebody and think you're going to be anchored here because you married an American. You can't be undocumented and drop off a baby in the Americas and think you off scot-free because you had an anchor baby. Because your anchor child may have been born in the Americas, but it's not just about proximity. It's about allegiance. And who do they have an allegiance to? They have an allegiance to the birthplace of their parents. Typically speaking, generally speaking, for those who never did pass 6th grade English and literature or English grammar, figuratively speaking, generally speaking, in general. Not everybody, some. You have to qualify that for the people in the back who didn't make it through 6th grade and want to try to talk against people who actually read and study. So what I'm saying is people don't understand that President Trump is making America great again. And really, he don't give a darn. He said they can all go. Ilhan Omar, he said it. Y'all knew it. We over here knew Ilhan Omar had married her brother. He said it on mainstream media the other day. She married her own brother. She can go back home. He said, I don't care if it's politically incorrect. I don't care. They stole billions of dollars from the American people and now asking for reparations and want to stay. It's not just that group. It's a lot of groups of people that are here. When I was working for universities, thank you so much for the blessing. Thank you. Thank you, family. Thank you, Dory Washington. God bless you, having a smile on you. When I was working for the universities, the students told me, I was told to stay away from black people. Now, how you going to stay away from so-called black people classified as black, but come to me for help at the same time? But they told me, we're told to stay away from people classified as black. Don't go to certain neighborhoods. Don't go cross channels because they're lazy. They don't want to work. They steal. They're the slaves of the Americas. It's really something what you learn when you work in certain spaces. But I don't blame them. They didn't know any better. They were just perpetuating what they were told. But I feel a certain way about it. Because when I and many of us were saying we are being replaced and people are trying to destiny swap with us, we were looking paranoid. But we know what we know. We know what we feel. We see all these communities, these people flooding our neighborhood. Now, first of all, we got to push out of our homes and our community. The beaches, that used to be the whole land used to be the ancient mound builders. We got pushed away from the beaches while they brought their money and their rich buddies to build up all these places around their beaches. Now we can't even enjoy our beaches here in the Americas, the Caribbean, all the Americas, all the places with the beaches. The people, their indigenous people can't even go to the beach. They can't live on the beach. They can't afford it. So we've been pushed out of our beaches, pushed out of different areas, pushed into certain areas. And then when they decide they want to move there in communities that were just originally for black, they'll push you further out. Then, even if you were in the projects, in the hood, where people had their pew-pew out, selling drugs. Oh, They start bringing in people from all over the world, pushing you even out of the projects. Now they had you living in the worst part of your city. Then they pushed you out of there and brought people from other lands, other countries, and put them there and gave them money and then called you the welfare queen. See, we're tired of it because women classified as black, we were told the ones, oh, y'all the most ones on welfare. Y'all the welfare queens. But now that people finding out that it wasn't just us, even women classified as white had to use welfare. You want to know what welfare is? It's not EBT. It's not getting money from the government because you need temporary assistance for you and your family. Welfare is any money coming from the government. So-called loans coming from the government, welfare. Business loans coming from the government, welfare. Let's keep it a buck. Any money coming from the government. So they pushed us out of even the lowest parts, worst parts of the communities and brought in a bunch of other people from other parts of the world. Called us welfare queens. Said, you're the reason why the man's not at home. You accepted that welfare and forced the man out of the home. When nobody told him to leave. Even if a woman took the welfare benefits, why didn't you put a ring on her finger and marry her so that she wouldn't take the welfare benefits? Why didn't you figure it out amongst your own community? But see what they didn't tell you about Papa was a Rolling Stone and how that was popular before women start receiving welfare assistance. Papa was a Rolling Stone. Wherever he laid his hat was home. It's normal for a man to plant his seed everywhere and have families outside of his marriage. Well, then it's normal for a woman to take the money wherever she can get it. And if it's the government, by golly, she gonna take it from the white man, the government, whatever she has to do to sustain her family. What's your point, Pruitt? My point is we need to stop blaming, the finger pointing at it was you, because there was an agenda higher than us, higher than the so-called black community, higher than the so-called white community, higher than the so-called American community to enslave everybody. Open up the borders. Let these people in. Let them destiny swap with you while they siphon all the money and send it back to the drug cartel who helped them get here. Send it back to the scandalizers who let them get here, the traffickers. They were sending money back to pay them off and building up their countries while they left us in perpetual poverty. It doesn't make sense. We've had enough. We're tired. We're reclaiming our families. We've all made mistakes. Some women may have pushed out their husbands. I don't know. Some husbands might have decided that they wanted to go out because, we know in the black community how men love to talk about polygyny. Now, they won't talk about polyandry where a woman can have more than one man. They won't talk about polyamory where everybody love on everybody. You have whatever partner you have whenever you decide. But they love talking about polygyny because they want to satisfy their penis. And we do know that in many communities, that was the way, especially if you have a higher population. Thank you so much for the like, Sister Tawana. If there's a higher population of women, you are going to have situations where the community decides that this man deserves more than one wife because he can afford her and he has the wherewithal and resources to protect and provide for her. But that's not every man's destiny, my darlings. And if you study anthropology like me, because I loved studying. When I first got into college, I had a teacher by the name of Eleanor Marsh, who was an anthropologist. I studied anthropology because I was trying to decide between the social sciences and political sciences and economics, but they all come under one umbrella. So let me study anthropology. When you study anthropology and you study the artifacts and the fossils of the people and the culture of people from different cultures, you come to understand and overstand that most societies were matrilineal, meaning all of the land and wealth was passed down through the woman because all of her children need to be provided for. And patrilineal, patriarchal societies, it's about the man's seed, right? And it makes sense for a man to want to lay claims on a woman's womb because only his seed he needs them to be provided. Even in the wild, he will eat up all the other children by another man. But in a matrilineal, a matriarchal society, which most of the societies were, they're concerned about all children. Doesn't matter who the fathers are. But in many of those societies, when you talk about sex and so-called marriage, a lot of those societies were such that we didn't have the marriage or FUCK licenses, fornication under consent of the king. That's what that is, the marriage license. It was a way for kings and people in power to make money by saying, if you want to have sex, you want to fornicate, you got to have a FUCK license, fornication under consent of the king. Then when that happened in Europe, because after the bubonic plague and all that, people were dying off, they were like, we got to control the population, but we only want certain bloodlines to have sex, certain bloodlines. So we're going to put in place the FUCK license and say you have to fornicate under consent of the king. Then that spread to the Americas and other places, and states start saying, hey, we need a FUCK license too, fornication under consent of the king, but we're going to call it a marriage license so the states can make money and we can have control over the children produced by that marriage, and we can decide what the man can do, what the woman can do, what they can do with their property, and what they can do with their children. And if they don't follow with our guidelines and how we want those children to be educated, we'll just create a system called CPS, Child Protective Services, snatch the child out of the house, traffic those children, and control their assets and how they're divided. But under matrilineal societies, the love of the marriage was based on whatever the two people agreed on. Nobody controlled the woman. She had control of, the wealth was passed through her. Inheritance for a reason. She decided who she wanted to mate with. And this is what people are practicing right now. We call it monogamy, but it's serial monogamy. In China, they call it a walking marriage. You stay with somebody as long as you desire, and when it's over, then you move on to the next partner. I'm not advocating for that. What I'm saying is that predated the marriage that we have today. So for all the people that want to only go back to polygyny, do your research. Because you can say that to the rest of the world and say polygyny is the way, polygyny is the only way. But you can't say that to somebody who studied anthropology. And so when you come to me with that, I say, I think polygyny is beautiful. Have more than one wife. That way, 3 or 4 women are protected and provided for. To have a covering, I think is beautiful. It's amazing. If that's what you like, I support it. You like it, I love it. I've seen it work. But trying to force somebody in that way of marriage or that way of life is not fair. And trying to blame women for everything that's happened is not fair, because we've all fallen victim. The women, the men, different so-called ethnicities, different people with different political affiliations, we've all fallen prey to their system of division. But we're tired, we've had enough, and it stops here. So when we say we don't want anybody here that's unlawful, we're not trying to be harsh, mean, vindictive, or cruel. We're saying you don't go into somebody's home uninvited. Number one, we didn't invite you here. Most people that are here were not invited by the indigenous peoples. You don't go into somebody's home uninvited. But if you are a guest in their home, or you decide to come, or if people say, okay, you're here now, at least respect their culture. At least respect their language and learn to speak the language. Because it's frustrating every time you pick up a phone, somebody's speaking and you don't understand them. That's not even being disrespectful. It's like, care enough. Or you walk into a store and how is it, if I go to Walmart, how is it that a foreign person is greeting me at the door to make sure whether I walk in, that I'm not walking in with something I shouldn't walk in, or when I walk out, how dare you my receipt to make sure I'm not stealing? You don't know my language. You're not from my country. You have the audacity to watch and monitor me on my own land. Help me make that make sense. I'm not mad at the people. I'm mad at the system, the people at the top that allowed this to happen. They don't learn the language, some of them. They don't learn the culture. They siphon money. They steal money. They get some money. They are given jobs. And some of them talk about us and disrespectful at the same time. It's not fair. We don't like it. And you wouldn't either. Because in the Caribbean, when I lived there, they were upset that some of the East Indians were allowed to come in and take over, and some of the Chinese were allowed to come over and take over. In Canada, they're upset that people are allowed to come and take over. In Europe, they're upset that so many Africans are there. They don't even know if it's an African nation or a European nation. It's not fair to displace people out of their home so that you can be comfortable when you have a home to go to and a whole lineage of people. The same energy you had here in the Americas, the same work experience, the same I work harder than y'all. I'll take any job y'all don't work. I'm experiencing the American dream. I got all this money. Take all of that to your home country and make it great. Make your homeland great again. How is that wrong? What's disrespectful about that? What is egregious about that? How am I a bad person because I want my country to be great? Because I go to certain areas of my country and I think you got Chinatown, you got little Italy, you got little this place, you got little that. Why? When you can just go home. And some people are not even allowed to come in your community. Not even welcome. And if you do find yourself there, you're not treated kindly, as if you're not supposed to be there. You feel you don't have a sense of belonging because you don't belong according to the way they make you feel. Now people are getting it. Now that so many of us are speaking out saying, yeah, we've been tired. We're tired of calling companies and somebody from another country is answering the phone. We can't understand the language. We're talking to a professor. We don't understand what you're saying. We're not trying to be disrespectful. We don't understand. So things are changing. People will have to go back home anyway to receive benefits under the Global Economic Security and Reformation Act. Do you know I had people in the banking and political arena, or I would just say people who are supposed to know about these things, that they're fact checking me and fact checking what I'm going to publish, to say that Nassar and Jassar wasn't real. And then when I said do your homework and they studied it and they look at all the economic reforms and all the executive orders that Trump is passing and all of the bills that have been passed, they had to agree that Nassar was real. Whether they call it National Economic Security and Reformation Act, National Economic Stabilization, it doesn't matter if they don't call it any of that. What the tenets of those laws is being pushed forward. I've done videos on Nassara. I've shown you the government is being dismantled. There are 441 agencies. At the time the ruling, the Supreme Court overturned the Chevron doctrine, there were 441 government agencies published on the website. Now 444. Now that they've been deemed as treasonous and unconstitutional, they're being downsized. That's why we're right now in the middle of a partial government shutdown. Before we were in a full-blown shutdown. You know what? Everything might come to a screeching, because when it's all said and done, when it all falls down, businesses are going to collapse. People who were in your homes that were in these government housing, corporate bought housing, single family housing, a lot of them are being deported. A lot of them are being arrested. Even landlords are under scrutiny now. They're being arrested for allowing undocumented people to live in the housing. Happy Friday. And I don't support people being mistreated. What I'm saying is things are changing. Everything could come to a screeching halt. More banks are closing. More corporations are closing. Commercial properties are closing. Malls are closing. Because a lot of people who were here had all these businesses. And they were just thriving, living the American dream that was created for Americans. Now they can go back home. They will receive the Global Economic Security Reformation Act funds over time. But in the meantime, they're going to have to build their own communities. I mean, you're here making money, accessing the trust of the people, getting low interest loans, getting business loans, getting benefits, working harder than the American people, taking the jobs we don't want. Just use that to build up your own nation. So what else is in the news is, unfortunately, Cuba is in crisis. Because Cuba was getting oil from Venezuela, but when Trump captured Maduro, man, that's a move. That's a gangster move right there. when he captured Maduro, but I reported before he captured him that Maduro has seceded. I reported that November 2025 when my students from Venezuela came and told me that Maduro's regime was over. But when he captured Maduro, and according to mainstream media, he stole the oil, he then put sanctions on Venezuela so that Venezuela could not send oil to Cuba. They were the only ones doing business with Cuba. But let me tell you something. Mainstream media will tell you that Trump stole the oil from Venezuela, which is interesting because when you have a war and you force people to stand down, to the victor goes the spoils. I don't know why that's a big deal. However, the Venezuelans and the Venezuelan government reported that Trump bought the oil. I reported that to my group and I showed the proof. He bought the oil in the amount of millions of dollars, and the Venezuelans said, we're going to use that money, that wealth that Trump used to buy our oil, to back up our Venezuelan Bolivar. We reported that in my private group. We showed the proof. He didn't steal it, he bought it, according to them. The Venezuelans are rejoicing while Americans are all in flux. So let's transition into Cuba. Cuba now is in crisis. Cuba been in crisis. So many of them have come here and other places. A lot of them came on President Biden's humanitarian visa. For 2 years, they were only supposed to stay, but they knew, thank you so much for the blessings, family. They knew the road. They knew how other people were getting over. When humanitarian visa is up, you just seek asylum. Or you just stay and you just trying to lay low. Well, now you can't do that. Whether you're here on a humanitarian visa from Cuba, Venezuela, Haiti, there was another country. You can't just stay. If you were here for 2 years, you have to go. But a lot of them are seeking asylum, and Trump put a halt to that. That was just another way to stay here longer, or to try to stay here permanently and then try to file for citizenship or not, and just keep taking the benefits and the jobs, and you can get a work visa and all that. He put a stop to the work visas. He put a stop to the seeking asylum. He has stopped to put a halt to it, and they're scrutinizing marriages to make sure they're legitimate, all that. But Cuba's always been in crisis, not because of necessarily just one country. But how come nobody is faulting the Cuban regime? How come nobody is talking about the Cuban president? So you can be angry with the United States of America and all these nations that put sanctions on Cuba, and I get it. I don't appreciate it either. I love the Cuban people. But why isn't anybody saying anything about the Cuban president? So what President Trump is doing is he's saying the Cuban president has a communist regime that has perpetually kept the Cuban people in poverty. Then it wasn't just him. Mark Rubio, who is the child of Cuban people, Secretary of State, said Cuba has a lot of resources. Cuba has a lot of money. Cuba has a lot of oil. Cuba has a lot of wealth, but the people in power have kept it from themselves and kept it away from the people. So all I'm saying is, yes, they had embargoes. Yes, they had sanctions. Yes, people couldn't do business with them. The Venezuelan country was the one sending them oil, and still they were having blackouts and electricity problems. But it's gotten worse because President Trump is saying that leader needs to step down. So this is what I don't understand. Why is it that everybody wants us to understand their plight and allow them to come on our lands, but they won't take to the streets to force their own government to stand down to give them what's rightfully theirs? Why won't the people take to the streets and force their government to? You can come to our country, wave your flags, march in the street, call our president names, to say America's this and America's that, and you have a right to be here, and you want reparations, and you don't want no kings, and talk again. I don't care if the Americans didn't like Donald Trump. You don't have a right to come on our lands and talk against what we do here when your country is in flux, when you don't have what you need. You don't have food, you don't have resources, you don't have wealth, you don't have anything, even though that's the land of your ancestors, and you won't even talk against your government because you're afraid that you'll get taken care of, taken out. But you have the gall, the audacity, the gumption to come on our land, wave your flag, which should be a crime, burn ours, speak against our way of doing things, and then ask for money and say you have a right to be here. Oh, they'll I have a right. I have a right to be here. I have a right. The lands are for everybody. It's for well, okay, well, when the Chinese flooded your place and they took over your businesses, you felt some type of way. Whatever country you're from, the CCP flooded your country, the East Indians. Oh, by the way, speaking of the East Indians, there are people from different communities and different countries. They're the minorities. When I'm talking about destiny swapping, things that were supposed to be set aside for the African Americans, people classified as black because of the years of enslavement and mistreatment and discrimination. Now everybody else and their mama and daddy and sister and brother and aunties, uncles and cousins, now they want to be a minority. Now they're not black. Now don't get it twisted. I'm not classified as black. Now my classification is white. No matter what country I came from, I can be darker than midnight coal. If I came from another place in America, I am not classifying myself as black, and I don't blame them, because black means you're dead and you have no standing in law. But they'll call themselves a minority. Who do you think is taking up all these minority scholarships in the engineering department? East Indians. How do you know, Pruitt? I worked in student affairs at more than one college. And I'm saying that of course, I'm generalizing, not all of them. But when I looked around at the scholarships that were earmarked for African Americans, I see East Indians, I see this and I see that, I see the Somalians, I see these. And I'm like, they don't even hang around so-called minorities. Why are they calling themselves, why are they getting all the scholarships and all the money? All the education and the money, while their parents have the engineering jobs, the infrastructure jobs. Mostly engineering is infrastructure, the accounting jobs, the banking jobs, the doctors, all the jobs at the highest level that we used to only see European people. Now all these others calling themselves minorities, getting all these minority benefits. Well, take the same energy to beautify your country and take to the streets and force your leader to come down. But now that our president is in your country saying, no, we're not giving y'all nothing until your leader comes down, because he's communist and he's got money, he's got resources. Even one of your own, Mark Rubio, who is a Cuban, saying, oh, they got money. How do you think they come here and run Miami? It ain't the dark ones, it's the light ones, though. How they run Miami? How they have all the businesses? And what do you think? We come from, I was born in the late 60s. Remember in the 80s and the 90s, we had Miami Vice. Some of those other shows, those cop shows, they were targeting the Haitians and the Cubans because of the drugs and all that. How is it that Cuba, the country, the island is so small, and they will tell you it's corrupt? I have Cuban friends. It's sad hearing the stories. They're giving rations, certain rations of meat and rice. I mean, it made me cry when my friend was telling me this. I cried. I was like, what? And when a ration of rice and meat is out, you starve. How do you make it? I asked. Well, the sex industry is big there. Europeans come there for the most part. And they have sex with the people. And that's the way people make chop money or little money. Same thing happened in Africa, so they can support their families. Now, other nations of people do the same, but on the highest of the list are the Europeans that come there. And so when your money is up, your money is up. So a lot of people are selling their bodies, men and women. But Mark Rubio said the country has money. The people in power have resources. They just won't release it to the people. So my question is, if all these people that are here because of war, because of their regime, because of, they don't have money, they need food, they want to experience an American dream, why don't they take to the streets or do whatever it takes, call for a regime change? I don't know their way of doing things. Write some documents, go to the meeting, whatever it takes, because they take a lot of energy. They use a whole lot of energy to cross the borders. Someone will sell everything they have. They will even enter a lottery, sell everything they have. I know when I spent time in Ghana and Africa, how it happened. They will sell everything, or they will put their life on the line. They will sell their children. They will give themselves to cartel, anything. Go through the mud, the water, tunnels, be flown here. Some of it's not dangerous because Biden flew willingly, hundreds of thousands of them here, while they bragging that they're so much better than us. I mean, we'll go through hell and high water to come and to stay. We'll burn the American flag, take to the streets, hire lawyers. Them immigration lawyers cost tens of thousands of dollars, but won't use that energy. I don't know. Maybe they'll get unalived if they do in their own country. All I'm saying is, look, the world is beautiful. The scripture says the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And yes, people should be able to travel wherever they can. But we don't live in that reality right now. We have laws in place, and we have laws in place for a reason, because some people's ancestors have blood, sweat, and tears that they've sown into that soil and in that land, and they've left an inheritance for their family members that they would like to see realize that inheritance. And the other people that want to come and enjoy the city, enjoy the state, enjoy the nation, enjoy the culture, have to come by permission. And they have to come and abide by the culture, the rules, the laws, the norms. And then when their time is up, they have to leave. If they want to extend their stay, they have to do it lawfully. What's wrong about that? How is that so hard? Because when I come visit your nation, I have to do the same thing, or else I'm going to the clink clink after I get extorted for money, because some of these other countries, baby, you're not paying no law. You are going to pay whoever arrested you, whatever money you can pay them, and it might go on up through the chain. And you're going to stay there until they say you can go home. You better call back home and tell them they hold you ransom in some of these countries. Don't play with these other countries, honey. They will hold you ransom and call your mama, call your daddy. I'm police officer so and such. I'm detainment person so and such, and I need this amount of money, and American dollars, USD, and I need to send to this account, and I need to send by a certain time, or else your person don't get released. And who you gonna call? So we have law and order here in the Americas, and we expect law and order to be implemented and executed and abided by. So Canada just pledged $8 million towards food for the Cuban population. And that's good for the Cubans. The Canadians, some of them are in flux, because they're like, how are you sending $8 million to Cuba when we got homeless people on the street? Why don't you force a regime change or do something else? But they're saying, like, we're homeless. We have veterans. We got children that don't have homes. We're hungry. The economy is in flux. We can't afford to live. Corporate places have bought up our lands too and our houses, but you're sending money somewhere else. But many of these places are having trouble getting food into Cuba anyway. And the Canadian, the Cuba's ambassador to Canada just said, well, we're having problems getting food to Cuba because the United States is trying to force a regime change and trying to force the Cuban president to step down. So he's blaming President Trump. But the Canadian people are saying, we got to take care of home first. Like, why? I agree. See, this is why I say use the energy to create change in your own home, because other people, while they care about these other nations, they're worried about how they're going to eat. So it's like somebody coming to me and saying, my kids come to me and saying, Mom, can I bring this person into the house to stay with us because they don't have A, B, and C. Now they got a home over there, but they don't really like it there because they don't have all the stuff that they really want there. And they heard that we live well in our home. You know, we got the Pruitt dream in our home. And they said they work hard, you know, but they only get one meal a day and they don't like that. And they're mistreated sometimes. Can they come to your home? And I'm like, well, we living pretty well, but we have a budget. I have some debt I need to pay off. Okay. You know, America's trillions of dollars in debt. I have debt I need to pay off. I have, you know, a little bit. I have some assets and some food set aside, but that's for you all, for you, my children, and then the remnant is supposed to go to the grandchildren. And then, if your aunties or uncles or my sisters and brothers, they come over and they need something to fill up their cabinets, I got this stored up for them. But when I was doing my budget, I only allotted for this amount. You know how when you give tithes and offerings, 10% goes to the Lord, which is really supposed to go to the storage, that when there may be meat in my house, that was supposed to be in the storage. So I only allotted. So I looked at my budget. You got housing, all these bills to pay off the electric, utility bills, car, insurance, medical, food, clothes, etc. And I only had this amount allotted for humanitarian purposes. So I can give that amount, but I can't give anything other than that. And I only have enough room in the house for my children and my grandchildren. And maybe one of you might come home, like maybe you might have some financial problems and you might need to bring your wife and my grandbabies here. But I don't have enough for you to bring a person down the street who's mad at their mama and daddy, or who doesn't like the ration of food that they get because they looked over here and saw how good we had and they wanted to take and enjoy what we have. Well, I worked hard for this. Your father worked hard for this, God rest his soul. Now there is a portion set aside, but I have to take care of home first. Now imagine somebody just trying to barge in my home, or somebody else inviting somebody in my home, placing themselves at the table. I work harder than you, so I'm going to be here. And from now on, we're going to speak my language in your house, and you have to accept that. And from now on, we're going to do my cultural ways. I'm going to put up my flag in your house, by the way. I'm going to play my music. And, now you get what I'm saying? Like, it's not fair to the people of certain lands that other people come and set up shop and take over. We have laws and orders for a reason. Laws are established in every single country, how long you're allowed to stay, and if in fact you're allowed to even come. We have laws against you committing crimes in our lands, just like there are laws against people committing crimes in yours. So a lot of people being deported will say, yeah, I went to prison, but I served my time. I should be able to stay because I have children there, or because wait, rewind. You went to prison. Wait, you just skipped over. You went to prison. You served time. No, who's talking about the housing development, housing projects and different places being overrun by gang members that's been raping women and committing violent acts? Who's talking about the drug cartel that crossed different borders to come into our country, many of them working for their nation? Why do you think Maduro was captured? He admitted to flooding our nation with fentanyl and other drugs. And some of the people that were allowed to come here did the same thing. Some of the people that allowed to come from Ukraine did the same thing. I looked it up years ago, who owns downtown Cleveland, while everybody's bragging about how beautiful it looks. The Ukrainian mafia, gangbangers, drug cartel. Even in Louisville, Kentucky, where I live, the PNC whole complex was overtaken because it was founded that it was run by and funded by Ukrainian mafia and the Chinese Communist Party. It's the same thing in many different parts of our lands. Everybody that comes here is not nefarious. Some people really just want a good life. Some people really just want to get away from what they're going through, and we get that. However, we must take care of America first. That makes sense. People were coming here, dropping off their babies, having anchor babies so they can lay a claim to the land, so they can work in politics and work in banking and work, and their children are going to have an allegiance to them, of course. We're even scrutinizing naturalization. That was something that the United States incorporated, instituted. Just because you naturalize don't make you American. It doesn't even mean that you have an allegiance to the American people. Naturalization being looked at, birthright citizenship being looked at. People are saying that they were born here or their parents had them here, so they have a right to stay here. That may be true, but all of that is being revisited. Because birthright citizenship was not for foreigners. Birthright citizenship, by way of the 14th Amendment, was for the children of African Americans. African American slaves, after slavery was over, their children could now be considered citizens. That was not. See what I mean by destiny swapping? All of a sudden, everybody want to use the African American clauses in the deep state system to be a minority, to receive benefits for birthright citizenship, and to receive grants, DEI programs, diversity, equity, and inclusion, money, Medicaid, healthcare. Everybody has a right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, food, clothing, shelter, everybody all across this planet. But we're going to have to start holding these governments and people in power accountable for what their people in their lands are going through. And that's what Donald Trump is doing. He's saying, I'm going to force your hand. Your people are struggling, asking for my help. Because if they wasn't asking for my help, they wouldn't be in my country. For all the people that are saying, what does Trump have? How does he have a right to go in another nation and demand their leader step down? Well, you the one came over here, got your behind on a plane, a ship, swam across, went underground under the tunnels from your country to America to take the benefits, to get a job, to improve yourself, to bring your spouse over here and your children and your grandma and your grandpa and your auntie and your uncle, and you took the money and you built the business and you got a no interest bearing loan or a low interest bearing loan, and you did this to enrich yourself, and you got stacks and stacks of money. I saw you. And when you go to MoneyGram and to these restaurants, different Ethiopian restaurants and different African restaurants and East Indian restaurants, and you send money back home, you did all that here. What gave him the right to go to your nation was you when you came here to use these benefits. Welcome to America. So now President Trump is going to your homeland, forcing your leader to give up power and unleash those resources so that your people can have food, clothing, and shelter. But what's interesting is that a lot of people will come to America and turn their back on their own people in their countries. Oh, they'll send a few dollars. And if you're really good to them, they might bring you here. But do they go back home and build it up? It's interesting talking to some people. They'll be like, Kia, we should go into business together. What are we going to do? You want me to do business in your country? What, we going to try to build up the infrastructure? Because I don't have a lot of money right now. Like, what do you say? Oh, well, I thought you could help me. You're American. Okay, well, what about when this money come that you're talking about? Well, what do you want me to do in your country? Well, we can, we can sell this item here for a lot more there because they'll pay for it because it's from America. I'm like, why would you want to exploit your people? You mean tell me I care more than you? Why don't we think about farms, food, cattle? Because you can either give a man a fish or you can teach him how to fish. You give him a fish, he can eat for the day. You teach him how to fish, he can eat for generations. You teach him how to farm, he can eat multi-generations. But the capitalistic mindset has really gotten to us all over the globe. And some of us don't even realize it. But it's because of what they did to us, because they made us chattel. When Motu proprio, the letter that Pope Francis wrote to Obama 2014 saying it was over for the deep state and all these banks and policy enforcers and government officials had to stand down. And he said, if we don't, the Grand Army of the Republic will be formed. The military will be formed to take us down. He said, at first, after the Civil War, we enslaved African Americans. We made them our chattel property to pay off our debts. No, did he say before the Civil War? He said we came to the Americas and we enslaved the African Americans so they can pay off our debt. And then after he said what date? I can't remember exactly. After some particular date, we enslaved everybody on the Americas and made them chattel. But we started with the African Americans. And because of some of the things that we've done, we have to stand down. I have a letter, a video where I read Motu proprio. That letter that Pope Francis wrote, I have about 2 or 3 of them. I tried to download it again, but what's interesting about my computer is now many of those programs where I used to be able to download my old videos, they have my IP address blocked. It's wild. Like a lot of these companies work together. They have because they have an error message. And when I look up the error message, it says, oh, these companies have blocked your IP address. So some of those old videos that I tried to download and re-upload, I had a problem with. But I had an old video where I was reading Motu proprio from a school that I was able to download because it came from my first YouTube channel. That channel, I don't know why I was able to download it from there. So if you see me reading from a school, that video was actually created in like 2022. So I did download that one, and I'm reading Motu proprio. And I am in a school, and I'm telling you, I'm in a school. I was at my granddaughter's school. This is before I took them out and homeschooled them, because that was in 2022. And I said, I'm going to read this letter from Pope Francis. So you can watch that video, or you can, I just uploaded that last week, or you can look back and you can, to any of my videos with Motu proprio, or you can just go to the search engine on YouTube on my channel, put MOTUPROPRIO, and I talk about how Pope Francis in 2012, 2013, somewhere around that time, said our time is up. Was he being benevolent? Who knows? He could have been a double agent. He could have been playing both sides. He could have been replaced, or he could have just been saying, look, he could have been nefarious, and he could have just been saying, look, it's over for us. Every single agency that's attached to the federal government, he said, he named some of them, FBI, CIA, IRS, they must be dismantled. He said all court officials must stand down. All policy enforcers, known as police officers, do not work for the people. They work for foreign entities. They must stand down. So when you saw the overturning of the Chevron doctrine 10 years later in 2024, that was a fulfillment of prophecy, a fulfillment of what had already been planned long ago. And then when Trump came back in January 2025 and created all these executive orders, downsizing the government and freezing the assets of certain individuals, he was doing the work of the military that was set in place long ago. Family, my point is, there are changes taking place. People don't understand that Trump is the trumpet in Zion that's been blown against the deep state. What is the trumpet blown for? As a Hebrew woman that actually practiced what people call, I was called a not a Hebrew Israelite, not a Messianic Jew, but something like that. Hebrew Pentecostal, when I was in my teens and all the way through a great portion of my adult life. So I've always kept the Hebrew, the dietary laws. I've never had swine. And when I used to eat meat, it had to have hooves and calf, and it had to chew the cud. All the fowl that if I ate bird, it had to be only those named in the Bible. If I ate fish, it had to have fins and scales. All my life, kept all the Sabbath, Seventh-day Sabbath, the laws prescribed or the holy days prescribed in Leviticus, the 23rd chapter. That's how I was raised. So I understand and overstand the so-called Hebrew way of life. Now I'm trying to remember why I even brought that up. Somebody remind me, why did I even bring that up? But as a Hebrew woman, or a woman that understood the way of living, I can't remember what we were talking about. We're talking about Pope Francis. I can't remember. Oh, Trump is the trumpet blown. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Enlight One. We have a feast called the Feast of Trumpet, prescribed it's in Leviticus 23rd chapter. I really appreciate you. During the Feast of Trumpets, you blow the trumpet, you blow the shofar. Now the Feast of Trumpets was about, it commemorated the time when Moses received the law from the biblical God, the God of the Hebrews, the 10 Commandments, right? So we commemorate that time. And when you move over to the New Testament, the trumpet was blown in the last day. You blow the trumpet, right? They said the Archangel Michael is coming back, and the angels are going to come. They're going to blow the trumpet. Christ is going to come back for the second coming of Jesus. Then those that are dead shall rise first. And then those that are alive and remain will be caught up together to meet Christ in the air. That's what they called, somebody said this word the other day, the rapture, I don't think rapture is in the Bible, but the trumpet was blown to make an announcement of the arrival of Christ. So that's why we have the Feast of Trumpets, to commemorate Moses receiving the law in the Old Testament, Christ coming back the second time. If you follow me, you've heard me say that we're living in that time where Trump is the trumpet in Zion that has been blown. I'm not calling him, the angel, archangel, or Jesus. I'm saying he is the trumpet. Metaphorically speaking, he is the trumpet, and really literally to wake up people. And when that trumpet is blown, there will be a second coming of Christ. What do you mean, Pruitt? I'm talking about Christos consciousness. The second coming of Christ, where people's Christos consciousness is awakening. Their crown chakra is awakening. That's why 2020 was the era of Corona. They called the virus Corona. Corona means crown. Trump was the president then. He is the trumpet in Zion that was blown to awaken the crown chakra, the Christ consciousness. This is the second coming of Christ. Then those that are dead, those that were asleep, that didn't know what was going on, they're going to wake up. They're going to ascend in consciousness. And those that are alive and remain will be caught up to meet them in the air. Everybody's going to ascend into consciousness and enter into the golden era. That's what Corona means, gold. It means crown, as in gold, as in crown chakra, as in Christos consciousness, as in we're all waking up to the fact that we've all been chatteled, enslaved by the deep state, not by a race of people, but by a group of beings who are not even human. And they pit us against each other, cause wars, discrimination, racism, sexism, division of families, put in diseases. All is to get us fighting and angry and at war with each other, because as long as we're living in chaos and we're propagandized and we're listening to mainstream media and we don't have love, truth, peace, and freedom and justice, we're so chaotic that we're easy to control, because the same people that will give you chaos will then force you to be so chaotic that you will come to your knees begging them to bring you order. Those same people or beings that enslaved us try to keep us perpetually enslaved so they can eat off our loosh. What is loosh? That psychic energy that people emit when they're traumatized, when they're victimized, when they're in pain, when they're angry, when they're hurt, when they're exhausted. We've been victimized, traumatized, raped. Our children have been raped. We've seen and heard of our children being raped. We've been propagandized through the media, through all of these idols and entertainers and politicians, through the education systems. We've had governments taking advantage of us, banks taking advantage of us, interest rates, this, take this loan out, pay this bill. You work, exerting all your energy only to pay out all these nefarious entities that don't give a darn about you, take all your money, do whatever they want to do with it to further trade and sell children and keep you perpetually running around in a cycle. So they can not only steal the money from you and make you pay taxes and all, but to steal your loosh, that psychic energy we emit when we're exhausted. Trump is the trumpet in Zion. He's also a mirror. A lot of people that hate him can't see or haven't seen his purpose. But what he's doing is evoking an emotion. What you should ask yourself is, why do you hate him so much? Why do you hate the executive order so much? Why do you hate law and order? Why do you hate people being proud to be American? Why do you hate people coming together? Why do you hate people that are investing in other countries, whether they're buying their currencies, investing in their infrastructure, whatever they're doing, it's going to help the people. He's a mirror. When you have vitriol or hatred for somebody, it's usually about how you feel about yourself. We're all mirrors for each other. That's why Chief Max says we got to get out this hatred, vitriol, anger, bitterness. It won't help you ascend. It will keep you anchored to the third dimension. We're going up. Remember, the trumpet in Zion is blown, Revelations. Then the Christ, second coming of Christ will come back. Those that are dead in Christ will rise first. Then those who are alive and remain will be caught up together to meet them in the air. And the latter part of that, and then they shall be changed in a moment of the twinkling of the eye. How are they changed? Their body will be changed. It's in Revelations. Now we're even talking about crystalline bodies. Now people Their DNA is being elevated. They don't eat as much food. They can't tolerate sugar and salt. They can't tolerate swine. They can't tolerate food that's not been properly prepared. They're eating less. People are fasting. They're doing intermittent fasting. They're drinking more water. Some of them are saying, I'm not drinking a lot of water. I'm drinking H3O, eating more fruits, drinking more fruit. Why? Because your body is being changed to a crystalline body. That's what the scripture was talking about. Of course, they changed the scripture and they made it seem like it was only literal. But when you know how to exegete and eisegete the scriptures, shout out to my former pastor in Louisville, Kentucky, who taught us how to exegete and eisegete the scripture, meaning you don't only just look at the etymology of the word, you got to know the word in context, the historical context, look at other words that was going on, and also know that during the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, they were changing things. The Romans that were changing things, the same people that were running the beast system that Trump is taking down and the military is taking down right now. You know the true meaning of scripture. So we are living in a different reality now. Nobody's trying to be hateful. People are tired of being taken advantage of. People are tired of other people coming into their country, living off the benefits while we've been mistreated, while we've been homeless, while we've been trying to figure out how to get into housing that's been bought up by major corporations and given to other people that's not from here. We're not angry at the people. We're angry at how this has been allowed to happen, and people that say they deserve to stay here taking from the people who live here. It's not fair. And if you don't understand that, then you're being selfish and greedy, in my humble opinion. Or you just don't care about law and order. So we have certain laws in place that are being executed. Whether I like it or not, whether anybody likes it or not, they are being executed because right is right. And we're living in an era of justice, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. The tenets of the dynasty that was here before. So I appreciate you all so much for listening to me. I love you so much. I have worked hard and tirelessly to share the message or messages that are coming from my soul and from our ancestors, from the Creator, so that all of humanity can be awakened and sovereign and wealthy. Because it doesn't matter what part of the earth you come from, or even you might have come from behind the walls, the ice walls, we all will be wealthy. It's going to be a little uncomfortable. Things are going to come to a screeching halt. I know President Trump is trying to prevent like a total chaos. But things will come to a screeching halt. You are arresting people that own banks, that own corporate entities. Remember, in the beginning of the podcast, I said President Trump is saying no longer can corporations own single family housing because we weren't even allowed to live in our own house. We couldn't afford it when these corporations bought it up and raised the rents. When these banks raised interest rates and we couldn't afford a mortgage loan to live on our own lands. That's crazy. And some people would tell you in their country, they would just buy off a house. And I can appreciate that. They'll tell you in our country, y'all get loans and interest rates. We buy houses. Ha, ha, ha. We're better than, now some of them go too far. We're better than, I don't know why y'all, but you're here. So let's not make fun of how we're living here, because here we've had to take out loans. That's even happening in other parts of the world where it used to be able to just put down some money, buy a house, and pass that house on down to your family and not be taxed. But now here in Florida and other places, they're doing away with property taxes. So things are happening, family. But like I said, it might come to a screeching halt. The Epstein files, they knew a long time ago who was involved. Many people were arrested a long time ago, but they're still being arrested. And if there is an emergency broadcast system announcement that will happen and another curfew that's being put in place, people need to stay in their house and let them make their arrests. So what I advise the Soul family to do, which is comprised of everybody on the planet, is to prepare. We've had many videos on how to prepare. Dave XRP Lyon told us how to prepare on my interview with him. And I will ask you, some people enjoyed the video, some people didn't, because he is a pastor, a minister. So he's going to come from a biblical place, and he's a Christian man. I have all type of people on my show. I ask that people respect my guests and not cuss them out or say mean things. You can disagree in the comments, but agreeably. Don't be disrespectful. Some people didn't like that he's a Christian man. That's his frame of reference. We want to honor people and respect them. As long as they're not disrespecting us, I feel that we should respect them. But he talked about how we might have an emergency broadcast announcement and things might come to a screeching halt. Now that we have the Epstein files out and people are being implicated in every segment of our society, even pastors, ministers, teachers, coaches, police officers, like lawyers, attorneys, there are rumors out that judges are being arrested because they led some of the scandalous rings, the cartel, allegedly. So things may come to a screeching halt, but as long as we put in our mind that we're in this together, we're going to create a beautiful new reality full of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We're going to ascend this third dimensional reality. We're going to help each other, and we're going to make it through. Some people are farming. Some people are growing their own food. Some people are buying seeds. Other people are honing their skills. Like if they know how to make clothes, they're honing their skills because Walmart may cease to exist. These places that bought up mom and pop shops may cease to exist. They're honing their skills to fixing shoes. We're going to need people to repair our shoes. Honing their skills to bake. We're going to need bakeries to bake our fresh bread. We need a farmer's market, so that means we need farms. We need hairdressers because these Walmart would even outprice the local barber and beautician so that they can do hair, nails, and barbering in a Walmart. Just greedy. So that's it for today. I know a lot of people they just don't understand what President Trump is doing. And we don't agree with everything everybody does. That's not even normal, right? But the big picture is that America and the whole world is changing. We are in the golden era. Even Trump said on his Truth Social 2 weeks ago, welcome to the golden era. But that, again, that's what corona means, crown, as in gold, as in crown chakra being activated, banking terms being spoken. So it's always my great pleasure to give you any information and news that I have. If you want to go further into investments and talk about certain things related to precious metals, foreign currencies, what's happening in other countries, join my private group. On Saturday, we're going to talk about how Africa is rising. I told you some things that Africa is doing publicly, but we're going to go into detail in my private group. And sometimes we speak privately because publicly, if people don't like what you say or they don't agree, they say things in the comment section. They can be a little disrespectful, and they just don't understand. And some things, you understand, you get. People don't understand, and they don't want to hear about all that, and that's okay. Looks like I lost connection for a minute. There's a shift in progress. Let's stand for the children. Yes. Yes. So if you can't afford my private group, love always, it's okay. I give lots of information. This is only for people who want to who privately talk about revaluations. I give lots of information and have done so for years. Now, on YouTube, only since 2017. And that was my first video, but I didn't even really start publishing a lot till 2020. But on my Facebook page, I've been talking since 2010. Lots of information. Doesn't cost a thing. You follow me. You may, if you choose to. Chief Mac has a channel. He gives a lot of information. Maria Nicole gives a lot of information. Mark Z gives a lot of information. Somebody said Frank 26 give a lot of information. There are a lot of people. You have XRPQF Team 1 on Twitter that gives a lot of information. Ariel, Ariel on Twitter. There are a lot of people that give information. So it's only for people who desire and have the budget to do it. And it's just their way of supporting me in another way. So I really appreciate you. I love you all. How do you expect a billionaire who's never gotten himself his own glass of water, who never had any real consequences in life, to know how the true American lives? You don't have to expect it. Thank you so much for the Cash App. Brother Edward, God bless you. And by the way, my Cash App, if anybody wants to send a donation, is $ Mama Kia 13, $MAMAKIA 13. I think that if you're talking about Donald Trump, he, yes, was a billionaire. Remember, he was recruited. And that's the, if you're talking about him, he was recruited by the military. But most people don't know how everyday people are feeling. Even if he's never experienced it, most people don't know what we're going through, but they can be shown, they can be told. They may not have experienced it. And, it's like a lot of things. I don't know what it's like to experience certain things. I just smiled because I heard somebody that was from another country that was saying, they actually were on my platform. It was somebody came on my platform. I actually brought them up live, and she was saying, imagine how it feels to have to go a day without eating. I was like, okay. Imagine how it feels to have a corrupt government. That's why I'm in your country. I said, okay. Imagine how it feels to be disrespected. Imagine how it feels to maybe only have one meal a day. And I was like, as a woman classified as Black, being an indigenous, autonomous woman, I can do more than imagine. Okay, because there were days we didn't eat. We lived in the worst housing in Cleveland, Ohio, where they considered us animals, and they had fences put around it. And then you had the CCP and other people in other countries putting drugs in our community, in our country, flying them in our country, drugs and guns, and then the federal government putting it into our communities, and people shooting at each other at night. They're stressed out because they're living in these houses. Because, by the way, the FBI has a whole lot of records on just people classified as Black, on everybody. Our whole culture, how we think, how we live, how we breathe, how we move, so that they can know how to further enslave us. So they figured out through all of their investigations and experimentations that if you have people living and housing close together, they get frustrated because they need space. So yeah, imagine I lived it. You want to talk about what? I lived in Cleveland, Ohio, similar to Chicago, that they call Chirac, because in the middle of the night you hear. I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, where we would hear gunshots and bombs going off, because that's a blue city, and a lot of them, whew, if only y'all know the stuff that go on there. We already talked about underground tunnels and CCP, thousands of automatic weapon parts found by the CCP in 2020 in Louisville, Kentucky. Imagine. I've walked over dead bodies. Imagine. I've run from gunshots. Imagine just a few years ago, because I support Donald Trump. And I don't know him personally, but I support what the military is doing to bring law and order to the Americas. There were gunshots in front, right in my home, bullets, right on my, what do you call it? Patio. Imagine. Many people here in the Americas are homeless. Imagine. Living on the street. Women now are living in their cars with their children. Imagine. So I hear what people are saying when they tell me, imagine what it's like living like this and living like that in my country. I'm like, we've been living like that for hundreds of years. And if it wasn't me personally, I know somebody. Imagine having family members that have succumbed to drug addictions for generations. Imagine not being able to get a job. Imagine being priced out of housing in your own community. We've all endured hardships in some kind of way. Even if it didn't happen to any individual, family members endured it. We know of somebody that endured it. Wow. Hey, Alton. Is that Alton? Says, I was homeless. Thank God you're no longer homeless. Thank God. Our government brought the drugs into our neighborhoods. I agree. Some of us can do more than imagine, family. We lived it. We lived the stress that people are going through in their countries. We may not have lived through everything, but we've gone through a lot. So I would read your comments. I'm trying to go through. I know people are saying I'm tired of the fear mongering. I hear you. We're all tired. But family, thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you for the Cash App blessings. Somebody sent that. I wanted to read them all, but I can't now. Oops. Edward, I see you, but I can't see the others because I'm on my phone. For anybody that sent a donation, thank you so much. God bless you. Heaven smile on you. Anybody that joined the private group, thank you. So many people are a year behind in mortgage. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Micro says, sorry to get off topic, but you are attractive. Well, thank you, darling. Thank you so much. Some people are asking, why are you doing videos on elegance and grace and softness and being juicy? Because some of us have lived a life where we've been the matriarch, or we've been married, and we've also been leaders. Many of us, we've led families, worked, because in a lot of families, it's not just the husband that work. A lot of families, two families work. A lot of us are tired. And we are in an era where we're falling more back into our softness. But in order for that to happen, you have to have a container, an energy to contain your feminine energy. And you have to have your husband to be the provider, protector, to give you provision, a world that embraces the feminine energy and takes care of the feminine energy and the children. And since we're creating that world, we also desire to teach women. A lot of people don't know that's something that I used to do years ago. I had a women's group. I had women's retreats. Well, we would talk about femininity and about elegance and grace. And I started a school to do the same, and we're going to revitalize that or revamp that. So now that we're in an era where more men are respecting us and more people are respecting us, and the energies that flooding the planet will respect women and children, women are feeling more safe to be soft, to be feminine, to be elegant, to be graceful. They're feeling like they can, as long as the planet supports them and loves them, and we get rid of grape, and we get rid of abusing women, we get rid of womanizing, we get rid of people that just mistreat or go through women, then women I feel like they can be soft now. And we have an environment now where everybody's going to be wealthy, so they don't have to be out working their fingers to the bone. And we don't have, the government and program and propaganda pitting women and men against each other. By the way, and the community classified as Black with us, Indigenous, autochthonous people, you have a lot of people online with this rhetoric about why they don't need men and men are staying away from women. But a lot of you don't realize that these people that started that whole push to cause this division online, they're not even melanin. They're not even African American, Black, Indigenous. Some of these people are from the Middle East. They'll have a name like Byron or Myron or whatever that they created, this image they created for themselves, but they're not even American. Then you have Pearl. She's a Caucasian woman. Like, you have these people that are online bringing guests about how Black men and Black women don't get along, and Black women have become so masculine, and Black men, they're no good. Why are you listening to people, first of all, that don't have your experience, don't have your culture, don't look like you, and don't have your best interests at heart? Even if they look like you, we have to get away from any rhetoric, information, news, or propaganda that doesn't serve love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice for the globe. Our soul family recognize and appreciate family. We recognize the feminine principle. We recognize the masculine principle, because we all have both of them. And there has to be a balance where they synergistically operate within us and as a couple if you're in union or in a covenant with someone. So family is important because family is the bedrock of our societies. You want a healthy society is based upon healthy communities. You want healthy communities? Healthy communities based upon and comprised of healthy families. And healthy families all start with a healthy whole you. So my name is Dr. Kia Pruitt. I love you all so much. I respect you all. I appreciate you listening to me. I appreciate your support. I appreciate all the donations through the gifts through YouTube. Thank you so much. I appreciate the Cash Apps. Thank you so much. I appreciate you joining my private group. If you want to go into investments further, you're not going to miss out because we give information. There are other podcasters that give information publicly as well. That's just for a group of people who want to talk further into investments. So I love you. I appreciate you for making me, you make me valid. You validate me because I have a message. And you embrace the message. Even if you don't agree with it, at least you take the time to listen to it. Sometimes you just take information and you use it as a catalyst to do further research, to prove a person or a theory right or wrong. But at the end of the day, it's up to each individual to use the information however they choose. It's my desire for us to have strong, healthy families so that we can have family, wealth, and legacy. It's my desire to teach about wealth, what's going on in other nations, what's going on with economic reforms, economic restructuring, so that you can have a legacy and leave wealth and leave values for your posterity, meaning your future generations. That's what leaving a legacy is all about. I love you so much. My name is Dr. Kia Pruitt. Happy Friday. I trust that I've said something to raise your vibrations and inspire you to create the most amazing, magnificent life that you desire and deserve. I see my grandson on here. Hi, Rara. He's let's go, Rara. I just caught your words. You said, Gammy, can you see me? I can see you, grandson. You listening to your Gammy? I love you, Amin Ra. So my grandchildren know about geopolitics. They know about geography. They know about Brics. They love studying Brics. They know about monetary reforms. They know what's going on in other countries. They know because that's my legacy. That's what I'm leaving for them. Hi, Sister Lisa. Thank you so much for the gift. Wow, that's a beautiful gift. Thank you so much. God bless you. I love you so much. Thank you. God bless you. Have a smile on you. And thank you all. You love me too. I love you more, Rara. Yep, start them young. It's my legacy. Oh, thank you for calling me an exceptional woman, mother, grandmother, doctor, and teacher. Thank you. And it is true. I am homeschooling my grandchildren, but their parents also help. I used to work in the schools. Oh my gosh, I worked at every level: elementary, junior high, high school, colleges, the medical school, all type of. That's just what I love to do is educate. But right now, I have businesses and I'm homeschooling my grandchildren. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy. It really does. So I love you, grandson. Anybody that's asking for my Cash App is $ Mama Kia 13, $ MAMAKIA 13. And Chief Mac, I did get your gift, your blessing that you sent me. Thank you so much. God bless you. Heaven smile on you for being a provider and protector and the chief of the soul tribe. Thank you for saying I'm doing great. That's Rara. Rara, thank you. That's my grandson. Thank you, family. Sister Janine, I tried to call you yesterday. You probably didn't know it was my number. Yes, med beds are coming out. I know somebody who owns a med bed or more, but he's not releasing it yet. He's the guy that sells me my products at honlistic.shop. HONLISTIC.shop, where I get my Manuka honey, my honey infused with cacao, my honey with black seed oil and oregano oil is where I get my black seed and oregano oil mixture and many of my other products. My sea moss, that's fruit flavored. So honlistic.shop. Okay, I'll text you next time. All right, Amin Rod, they're saying hi to you, grandson. Is your cousin on too? Does she see me? All right, family. Happy Friday. Yay! I'll talk to you later. I love you so much. On April 2nd, you all are saying med beds are going to be officially released. That's just in a month, in a couple weeks. What you say? Overseas listeners find it difficult to make donations via Cash App. Please, if you can, give us an alternative. Oh, you're so kind. You can find me on, thank you, on PayPal at Dr. Kia Pruitt. I think it's DrKiaPruitt, or you can just Google Dr. Kia Pruitt on PayPal. And then Cash App is Mama $Mama Kia 13. I think those are the only two ways. Thank you so much. If you're overseas, I really appreciate you spending the time to talk to us, because I know there's a time difference. So I think that's it. Let's go, Ra. Ra saying hi to you all. Happy Aloha Friday to you too. All right, family, I have to go. I have some business to take care of. I'm sure my grandson wants me to call him, and I got to pay some bills. I'll be glad when this is all over. Like, I get tired too. I'm human. I get tired too, family. I smile. I have high vibrations. I do all I can to keep this whole family elevated. But I'm human. And sometimes I think to myself, this needs to end. For those of you asking, thank you so much. Thank you for saying, De Leon said we needed to hear this. Thank you, Dr. Kia. Good afternoon. Chief Mac, is Chief Mac still in the house? If you're asking how to get in contact with Chief Mac, unityinmotion45@yahoo.com. You can contact him for consultations or a private trust called the 508c1A trust. That's another thing I've had people to ask me, is that real? Like, even people in financial industries. And after we did our research and we showed them that it is private and that it helps you operate outside the jurisdiction of, the government, and how they're, you still have to abide by laws, but that's the private trust, then people had to agree that it is ironclad and it is very secure. So if you want to get in touch with Chief Mac, unityinmotion45@yahoo.com. I love you, family. Thank you, Sister Janine. Take care. I'll talk to you soon. Peace, and have a happy, merry Aloha Friday, or happy Friday. Yay! I love you so much, family. You're welcome. It's my great pleasure. Now I need to get something to drink. My throat is dry and I'm exhausted. Peace. I love y'all.